Welcome to the Change the Game podcast, where we are changing the game by doing business differently. We're highlighting stories of capitalism at its best. I'm Steve Baker, and with me, as always, is Rich Armstrong, president of the Great Game of Business and co-author of our new book, Get in the Game: How to Create Rapid Financial Results and Lasting Cultural Change. Rich, how are you?
I'm good, Steve. How are you?
I'm good. We are creating all kinds of rapid financial results and lasting cultural change, but we're really excited today because we get to do both at once with Krisi Schell. She's the executive vice president of HR at SRC Holdings Corporation. So our parent company, SRC, Krisi was originally brought in 2013 as our organizational development manager and head of talent. And in the past, she's been in technology and the energy sector and around HR marketing, risk, facilities management. She's like this Renaissance woman. And I've known Krisi for a long time as well. We're going to get into that, I think. Out in our community here in the Ozarks, she serves as a board member for the Greater Ozark Center for Advanced Professional Studies. It's kind of a joint venture with the Springfield school systems to get high school students into the idea of, wow, we could do something different than just going to college randomly. We could actually have a focus. And also the Springfield Area Chamber of Commerce and our Ozarks Region Workforce Development. Woo! Krisi, how are you today?
I am doing great. How about you?
Doing well. I'm excited to have you here, not only as a professional, but as a friend, because through the years, you've been really helpful to me and my family and my colleagues. Let's talk about your background a little bit, because this is really diverse. Most people that would be considered, HR, talent, organizational development is kind of focused, but you've been all over operations and a lot of different experience in a wide variety of industries before even coming to us. Can you talk about that a little bit? Introduce yourself to our listeners.
Absolutely. So I think first to start off, I went to college to become a psychologist, right? I was really interested in psychology and just truly have a love of people. And I also really enjoyed business. And so as I was going through college and realizing that in order to actually make money with a psychology degree, I needed to either go through and get a master's or a doctorate, or I needed to find a way to use this in the business world or somewhere else where I was actually employable. And given that I didn't have the funds to just keep going to school forever, going really kind of, leaning on that love of business made a lot of sense. And I do remember having the conversation with my academic advisor, and I said, I think I'd really like to look at human resources because it is this perfect blend of people and business. And she said, I really don't think you're going to like it. She's like, it's all transactional and it's a lot of paperwork and it's not what you're thinking it is. And I was like, okay, well, I think I'm going to try it because I don't really have a lot of other opportunity. And I think I'm going to like it. And I think I've been incredibly fortunate that the HR field has changed so much over the years, from the early 90s when I was having that conversation to today, when professionals are true business partners. And so it's been a cool experience in all the businesses that I've been in that I really get to focus on. People spend most of their time at work. And so this is a chance to really make sure that, I have a chance to impact their workplace and make it a great place to spend their day. So when people choose to spend their day at SRC, I want to do everything I can to make sure that they're spending their day in a place that is great to work and that they can actually feel like they've made a difference in what they're doing each day.
That's fantastic.
Following that, my first job out of college was with the electric co-ops. So I worked for Associated Electric Cooperative here in town. It was a power generator for all the rural electric cooperatives in Missouri, Southeast Iowa, and Northeastern Oklahoma. So I spent a lot of time in those. I was there for 7 years. Had a lot of opportunity to work at the power plants as well, in and out of the power plants, as well as in the corporate office. And it was I did a lot of technical recruiting. Also had a chance to do a lot of management and leadership development very early in my career. Even had a chance to work with succession planning and connecting our high performers to some of the most prestigious management development programs throughout the United States. And so I feel really fortunate to have gotten those responsibilities early in my career, and it's just been able to build on that since that time. Also learned a lot, about, very technical fields, when you're working with electrical engineers and mechanical engineers, and you're learning how power is generated and distributed. That really exercises a side of my brain that maybe I wasn't always focused on in the psychology and the more creative side. So just unbelievably fantastic people, a very professional organization, and that was a great foundation for me. I did have a chance to stay home with my children while they were little, so kind of continued that people development on a very different scale. And so I tried to start a couple of businesses while I was doing that. Actually, Steve, you helped me create some logos for one of those.
Yep.
And I wanted to do training. I had a child that had food allergies, and this was whenever kind of at the beginning of those days when people didn't talk a lot about food allergies, and going out to eat was quite a challenge. And so I put together a bunch of materials and kind of did door to door basically for different restaurants, trying to sell my services to help their staff understand the importance of food allergies, and turned out to be a great educational experience for those restaurants, but they were not interested in paying me for those services. So when my youngest
You were just ahead of your time.
Yes, there you go. When my youngest went to kindergarten, I went back to work and had a chance to work for a software company that was still in a startup phase. They're here in Springfield, and they're wildly successful today. It's Intuitive Web Solutions, and they have a product called BrightCore, which is an enterprise-wide insurance software system that they were just building when I started. I was the 18th person in, and the first time they'd ever had HR. So that was an incredible experience for me after being out of the workforce for a little while, to have a chance to come in, really help them build the HR processes that they needed to scale that business. And also learn a lot in that process, right? In a startup, there is a lot of piloting, right? There's some trial and error. You figure out you get to know the culture, and you get to know the people, and you get to try different things to see what's really going to work. Coming from a utility industry, I had a lot of processes in my mind, right? I thought it was a very structured HR organization. And then you go to a software startup, and you implement some of those same practices that you thought were just the way to do everything, and you find out that that was a little more structure than a small software company needed. And so a lot of learning occurred in the time that I was there, and I very much enjoyed it. So after that company, we kind of went through some growing pains, and it was kind of just at the right time. Christy Stringer with Great Game sent me a message from LinkedIn that said that SRC Holdings had an HR position, and she thought I ought to look at it. She said it had great benefits, very similar to the co-ops. And Christy had spent some time in the co-ops too, and she thought it might be worth my while to just check it out. And when I worked for the software company, we had actually in those growing pains, we had self-implemented pieces of the game. We opened up our books and wanted everybody to understand kind of where we were. At that time, only a few of us kind of knew our financial position. When you go through some growing pains and rough patches, it's not always where you want it to be. So we opened the books and wanted everybody to be on the same page with that. So having the chance to look at, to get into SRC was really attractive to me, because I wanted to better understand those processes. Also, I'll tell you from an HR perspective, prior to working at the software company, when people started talking about financials, I really just had my brain would power down. That was not the part of the business that I paid attention to. Whenever we were growing rapidly and had a bit of a sales pinch, that's when I started listening to the financials and realized how that impacts people, and how it impacts the fact that, whether we were going to have to lay off people, or whether we could add, or where we were going to be. So that was the other thing that made coming to SRC really attractive to me, was I knew it would be a chance for me to strengthen my financial acumen. And I can say that has been a definite benefit of being a part of this organization. So that's kind of where I am today. I have the chance to work in my current position. I have the opportunity to work with all the SRC companies, And I love that. It's a great variety. It's a dynamic organization. There's always something going on. And I have a chance to work with truly fantastic people all across this organization.
Yeah, that's true. With SRC, there's certainly a lot of opportunities to see business at a lot of different angles. No, thank you, Krisi, for that, and thanks for joining us today. It's really good to have you on here. And I was curious, when you were talking about all that work experience, and you talked about that with the one company, the tech company, you had some experience with open book management. But when you came on to SRC and you got exposed to what SRC was doing and how we practice open book management, were there any aha moments that come to mind?
Absolutely. I think the biggest aha moment was that we kind of cracked our books rather than actually opening all of our books. And I say that only from the perspective of we were sending financial statements out through email. We wanted people to be able to see those. And they were historical though, right? We weren't going through the process like we do here at Great Game, where we're looking to see where we are today and then comparing that to our future goals and what can we do to actually hit those goals? What do we need to change and adjust in order to hit the plan that we've committed to for the end of the month? The other big aha moment was the fact that we didn't take the time to teach people, right? I mean, we were hugely fortunate to have the people in that organization are insanely smart, right? You've got software developers that they're brilliant. So I think they understood it and were able to understand it better, than maybe some others might be, but we didn't take the time to teach it. So did we really get the full benefit by being able to help them to see how they impacted the numbers and how they impacted the different lines? That is something that we missed. We also didn't do it, although we sent them out through email, we weren't getting together and going through the numbers. And we weren't doing that in a rhythm where you had the chance for questions and really that feedback. It was always an open, the end was always, please come and see me if you have questions. It came from our CFO. And I know he would have been he was more than happy to ask, answer any questions that came up. But as people are busy in their day to day, that's different than getting together as a group and really focusing on those financials and having a chance to learn from others who are asking questions and then hear the stories behind the numbers like we do here. We also, that was really the only part of the system that we implemented. We didn't put together many mini games. We didn't do a bonus program. Our bonuses typically came out of when we were like, how you get rewards on your Chase card, and you kind of have this, we would have let our Chase card rewards accrue through the whole year. And then we would divvy them up at the end of the year. And that's how our bonuses came about. So, credit card use was highly encouraged, but that's a very different method of bonus structure than what we have here, where people can really see how they can impact it and we share in the wealth that we create.
Well, I hope Jack Stack is listening, because I just want to say, Jack, spend more, you get more bonus. That's what I'm hearing. Thank you, Krisi, for bringing that in.
Jack would say that obviously came from Krisi. So.
Well, you're tying this in beautifully, because the way that we look at it is that Great Game is far more than open book, right? So cracking the books or fully open, that's one component, kind of know and teach the rules. And then of course you got to have accountability and forecasting and everything. But I wanted to kind of focus on what you were just hitting on there, is the stake in the outcome. So that can be benefits package. You mentioned that. It can be mini games. It can be employee ownership. I think we'll touch on that later, but let's talk about some of those benefits and bonuses and things like that oftentimes people struggle with at the leadership level and ownership level, because research has shown us over and over again that usually bonuses to employees are never enough, and bonuses to owners and leaders are usually, they feel like too much. And so it's just a wrong thing. And SRC is the first place where I ever was, it was revealed to me that, we generate the bonus. We actually earn this thing. So you kind of know where you are at any given time because of the financial acumen you've referred to. So let's talk about this. You've seen in all of your experience across all these different organizations and sectors that there are different rewards and there's different recognition programs and that sort of thing. I know you've been involved in in implementing a lot of those things. So can you tell us what stands out as a best practice outside of SRC? Because we'll come back and talk about that.
So in general, what stands out as a best practice for rewards and recognition? Is that?
Yes.
So, I think first, but before I kind of get into those, I was talking with Rich earlier, and if for those listening, if you haven't thought about recognizing your HR team after what they've been through since last March, highly encourage you to take a few minutes to go and thank your HR professionals for all they have been through in the last 11 months now. In addition to their day-to-day, they've been responsible for safety, developing new work environments, keeping people engaged when they're working remotely or working 6 feet apart from people at all times in a mask with safety glasses maybe that potentially are fogging up and driving them crazy. So they're working hard to keep morale up, keep people safe. And then all the while, they are doing everything they can to stay up to date with CDC guidelines as they continually evolve and change and get their people information on vaccines and really, truly just keep people safe. So when we're living in a world where a cold's not a cold, right? And where, somebody just lost their sense of taste and that was the only symptom that they, potentially had. And we're really just, heightened on that. I think a little PTO would go a long way for those folks whenever we get a chance to kind of get back in their recovery. A little bit of a break would be highly appreciated. So
Love it.
Aside from that, I think best practices in general, what I see across our companies as well as in other companies is that peer-to-peer recognition is just a fantastic way for people to truly feel valued. And I'm going to share probably a little bit more about what we do here, even though I have seen it in other companies too. And to me, that I think one of the best examples from another company that in the software company that I was in, we would keep those crushed sodas in the refrigerator.
Sure.
And then every once in a while we would run kind of a program where people would come by and they'd give you a soda and they'd say, "You're crushing it," or it'd have like a sticker on it. I mean, there's a simple thing like that. But when it comes from someone who you work with every day that is recognizing that you're excelling at what you're doing, it means a lot. Here across the companies, we have so many different programs. So we do have a organization-wide recognition that's called the Spotlight Award. And that is a formal process where people put, you actually write in your submission and you highlight how someone went above and beyond. Many of our companies have taken that to a little simpler process within their own organizations, and they call it the Flashlight Awards, just a spinoff off of the Spotlight Award. And again, though, it's taking the time to write out what they've witnessed, where they've seen somebody go above and beyond in their company, and then submit that. And then individuals get usually a prize. One Newstream has little flashlights that they give out with that. And then, you get a certificate for getting that award and recognition in the organization. Some of our others have a kind of a thumbs up thank you that they do. We have a company that does a "You Are Awesome," and they have an iconic person that actually announces that in each of their huddles. That in a really fun way reads that what was submitted and then lets that person know that they're awesome. Through COVID, we have been having at least weekly calls across the entire organization. And early in, when it was just kind of crushing everything that we were trying to figure out, it was apparent to us that we needed to end those calls with something good. So what we had initially did kind of a call out for people to organically shout out, to others what they'd seen that was good in across the organizations. And then we formalized it a bit. Now people submit those and we read our formal "Tell Me Something Goods." We're kind of like a little radio broadcast at the end of each of those. So peer-to-peer is really, I think, important, whether that's formal or whether it's just an organic shout out. Also, another thing that I've seen that really helped us a lot was we've been focusing on retention for the last several years, and we were struggling with people that would leave in that first year of employment. So we decided to step up our service award program, and we now give a service award after the first year. It's an acrylic #1, and it's given to them at a huddle. but it's just to thank them for all their contributions to that first year. We also added a 3-year award, just looking at those milestones to help people realize that matters to us at that 1 year, for you to stay, a year, 3 years, don't wait till the 5-year to actually say thank you for being here. The other thing we did in that is the 3-year, again, you get an acrylic number, but we partnered with OC Tanner for our service awards program, and they actually, we get a nice booklet that we give that has a message from our CEO. And then the associate gets to order from that. And there's a list of gifts per service year. And then those go to the home. So it's a nice tie-in so that their families can see that they're valued at their place of work. And so, dad or mom gets a package in the mail, and it's their service award from SRC that has everything with it and a logo in there too. So I think that was an important thing that we did from a recognition standpoint. Trying to think. So that's a couple of things.
Yeah, that's great, because I see a combination of, a spectrum, if you will. So you've got the peer-to-peer, which really costs nothing. It's just simply a pat on the back, an attaboy or attagirl, as they say, all the way up to a reward system based on sticking around and being an accretive part of the business.
I think, something else that Great Game offers that all of our organizations use is you've got a recognition tool that allows you to capture information from each of your associates that lets us know how they like to be recognized, list some of their favorite things. And then also that some of our organizations have incorporated that form into their annual paperwork, as they're updating emergency contacts and benefits forms and so forth. So that way they're keeping that information fresh. There's nothing that you can do worse than publicly recognizing someone who finds that to be the worst thing in life, right? I mean, then you've totally taken away, it felt so good to get that person up in front of 200 people and to say how fantastic they are. And inside they're just dying, right? And so it's really important to know your people, know your culture, and really know how they like to be recognized. Because all you're trying to do is make them feel special and make them feel valued. So it's important to get to know them and find out the best way to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Great advice.
I think that anybody that knows me or has heard me speak before knows I'm pretty passionate about that stake in the outcome section, because I worked for companies my whole life that you didn't know what was going to happen. Were you going to get a bonus? Was there even a bonus program? Who knew? But I heard this one recently, and it's pretty close to home. So I just want to share it with you and see what you've seen out there as a professional in the people business. So there's a national ad agency that I heard just introduced, very excitedly introduced, unlimited vacation, kind of inspired by Netflix and very cool tech companies in Silicon Valley. And so the ownership of the business is like, woohoo, this is amazing, unlimited, they can really get some press out of this. But here's what I heard. So I know people that work there, and what they heard was, oh, I get what they're doing. They're trying to take something away from me, because what they immediately started texting one another is links to like Inc. magazine about how, articles that's, were kind of outlining that, oh, unlimited vacation's a scam or this or that. And in one particular instance, one guy goes, I only got 3 days of my 21 days last year. What's unlimited going to do? So in other words, it had the complete opposite effect they intended. And I was just wondering, have you seen other examples like that where this brilliant new hot idea actually backfires?
Yeah, I mean, I think so for sure. When you talk about unlimited vacation, especially, I think, so, I mean, I will say I've implemented that before at another company, and it was actually really successful. But part of that was because I think we shared the why behind it,
There you go.
And so part of that why was that if the fact that we knew these people were working all the time anyway. And so if they were working at night and they didn't want to come in the next day, great. It's like we wanted to treat them more like owners and help them to see that we really understood that they were responsible adults, and they could have the flexibility to take the time. The other thing is it was a business reason. And so I'm going to give this insight, and then we can talk about kind of other things too. But when you have vacation on your books, that's a liability. And whenever you run into a cash crisis in your organization, especially if you have to right size a company, paying out that vacation does not help your cash position. So unlimited vacation also allows for a company to be able to give vacation freely based on responsibilities. Everybody knows they still have to get their work done, but it removes that vacation liability from the books. And so that was, and that was an openly shared purpose whenever we did that, and people liked their jobs more than they liked their vacation banks. So I think a lot of that goes to, how do you clearly communicate and help people to understand the why and the how. So that would be something that I would encourage in that. But I think with any of those kind of hot sizzle programs that are out there, not every company needs a ping pong table. Not every company should have a cafeteria, right? Or have lunches all the time. What you really got to know is, what do your people value and what's going to help you make your business goals, right? How are you going to be successful as an organization? And then if something seems like it's the right thing for your people, maybe have a committee that helps you decide, grab some people within your organization, and don't just have it be some decision that's made on high. Let's find out, is this something that's really going to get the result that we're seeking? And then think about that before implementing. It sounds to me like it was a great idea that seemed like would be a huge perk that fell flat. And so I think if you got to make sure that your people trust that you're doing things for the right reason.
Right.
And if that's not solid, then that's probably what you need to work on first before you start to add some new hot program to make your people feel valued.
Such good advice.
No, that's great. That's great. Really good advice. Kind of shifting gears just a bit, Krisi, is we talked a lot about creative communication, especially in communication techniques and engagement techniques. And this past year, as we've probably tapped in as many as we possibly could do. But one of the success stories that I think SRC has, and this has gone on for a while, is what SRC calls their Owner's Cup, which is an annual program that's been run at SRC for a number of years. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that really has done to impact the organization, and maybe specifically how it supported us through this, this pandemic change that we had to go through?
Sure. So the Owner's Cup came about in 2014, was our first year to launch it. Our ownership culture committees, we have those in each of our SRC companies. And that was actually, those committees, that structure was put in place in 2010, 2011, just prior to us actually going 100% ESOP. So as Steve mentioned earlier, I joined the organization in 2013. And one of my roles was to be the chair of the Ownership Culture Steering Committee and really champion the game across the companies by working directly with those OCCs. So, I mean, that was honestly couldn't have been a better gift for me coming into SRC to get to work directly with those organizations. And in some of our early meetings, they were all very dedicated to the game and to making sure that their companies were playing at a high level. But they felt like we needed something that would keep that as a priority for our top leadership, as priorities within the organizations shifted, and as you're kind of looking through with each of our companies, every company plays the game, but every company is decentralized, and it looks a little different in each of our organizations, just the same as it looks a little different in each of the great game companies that are listening to this today in the community. So we do tend to focus on outcomes rather than being prescriptive in the way that we play the game. And so we tried to do the same with this Owner's Cup. So this group, as we were meeting, they came together and they said, we need a competition. We are so fiercely competitive across this company. We need to lean on that and leverage it to make sure that we're playing the game at a high level and continuing to shine a spotlight on this so it doesn't lose its place in the importance of our organization. And so we created a game. And that first year, we worked really intensely with Great Game. Rich actually went to all the companies with me. We went through and we kind of did an audit of everyone's Great Game practices, and we had Donna Kopic and many others from Great Game help us to figure out where everybody was at, and then put some goals together to really get back to basics and the best practices of the game. That game has evolved. The competition has evolved greatly since 2014. And just a real quick story that I wanted to share in that is that one of the cool things about SRC is that we are so bottom up, right? And so, you know, our associates have a voice and they really do have a hand in how this company is run. And I said I came in 2013, we ran the competition for the first year in 2014. At the end of that competition, I had a group come to me with a PowerPoint of how this competition could be better, because we don't do things with holdings, putting things from, you know, on high down. They wanted to make sure that this was done in a way that each of the companies could set their own goals, prioritize what made sense for them so that they could really put efforts in place that were going to improve the practices of the game that they needed to strengthen, and then that we would evaluate towards those goals. And so that's what we've done. And I just love that because it's so true to SRC. And that came, as I said, that's continued to evolve over the years. We have the competition itself is focused on the goals that the company set for themselves, and they do progress towards those goals throughout the year. They use the practice scorecard survey to assess where they're at each year and to help set those goals. So that way they can see, based on their associate feedback, what areas of the game they're strong in and where they really need to dedicate some efforts and some training and coaching, you know, to kind of step that up. We also focus on our financial accuracy, our forecast accuracy, and we base that on monthly basis as far as actual to projections, and we use our consolidated financials for that. We also do know and teach through the year. So our organizations focus on education bites, and they share those. So that allows us to share some best practices across all of our SRC companies through the game, and then we borrow, steal from those so that we can all kind of share in that learning. We also, at the end, I'm kind of skipping around here a little bit, but at the end of that competition, we invite in some outside Great Game practitioners to sit on a panel and listen to the presentations from each of these OCCs, that they capture everything that they've done through the year. And there's a rubric that our panel of judges use to evaluate how each of these companies have played the game and how they've really increased either from their mini games or from their education or the recognition programs. What have they done towards their goals that they set at the beginning of the year? And this past year, we were fortunate enough to have Cindy Stein from Greene County, we had Heather from Vital Farms, and we had Kelly Jane Vaughn from Paul Mueller all come and sit on our panel. We really appreciated their time. So whenever I look at what happened differently in 2020, the first thing I would say is that we started off the year going to be just like any other, where the companies actually came in and they were ready to go through their goals. And ironically, that day, that meeting where they were coming to go through their goals was the exact same day that really the pandemic hit. And so we had the OCCs in our large conference room and all of our executives in the boardroom trying to figure out what we were going to do. So it's a moment in time that I felt very divided on where to be in that moment. And also I think it just was really kind of an indicator of how things were going to change through the year. What we ended up doing was kind of taking a step back and talking to our OCCs and our leadership teams to find out what was going to make the best sense for this year. And what we landed on was this is the year we needed to invest in training. So we wanted to be sure that our OCCs, that their chairs and their advocates really understood the different steps of the game. And so we used the Great Game community to actually take them through all of the get in the game steps. And then they also did the peer groups with coaches after each of those steps so that they could ask questions, talk about what was happening in their companies and how they could best implement the different steps of the game to really strengthen their gameplay within the SRC companies. There was really some hesitation, to be honest, among the leadership team in the beginning on whether or not we should play this competition in 2020. We were all, we were on shared work. So we had, people out of people were working, 3 days a week through a large part of the year, given the pandemic, and people were working at home. It was tough to get our teams together and go through this. But I think that what was awesome is that our leadership teams, all of our general managers, overwhelmingly said, we're going to do it. This is who we are. We're going to play this game. We'd ask you to make it as least administratively burdensome as possible. And we want to invest in training. And the results of that training was very apparent in the presentations. The understanding of the game and the steps that 10 steps of implementation was at a level we've never seen before from our OCC chairs in those presentations. So I'm very proud of what they've accomplished in a tough year, and I'm really proud that this competition allowed us to keep our culture and keep this as a focus throughout the year. So one of the big impacts and takeaways, so many mini games played, right? So when you talk about a stake in the outcome and you think about the rewards bonus programs, some of our companies were able to attain some levels of bonus in 2020, but by and large, the majority were not, given the market conditions. Mini games are what you lean on, right? Whenever you're not making bonus, because that is where you can get some wins. You can actually have some financial savings, and you can reward people for what they've done. So we had a lot of mini games going on all across the organization, and to the tune of saving $2.7 million across the company through those results. So that alone is worth playing the game and worth running the Owners Cup. But that was just one of many outcomes that we saw from that event.
Amazing.
Well, congratulations on it. It's interesting when you have that kind of rhythm to the organization and the competition. And I know that's maybe a little unique for SRC, the way we like to compete against each other and the sister companies. But to put that out there, it was really interesting how people rallied around it and said, look, if there's anything we can do this year is to protect our culture and enhance our culture in the pandemic. And it was really done well. With that said, Krisi, though, is that if you have, what advice maybe would you have for listeners that are saying, okay, that sounds interesting. I'd like to, build something like that with my own organization. Any kind of advice you would give to these organizations and how to put these programs together?
Yep. And yeah, absolutely. And I think, first of all, what you just said is usually one of the first questions that I get as far as, I don't want to run a competition in my company. I don't want departments to be against each other. And so I do think, don't be afraid of a little friendly competition. It just makes us all better. And it is friendly competition. So I would encourage that. I would first ask you to find your great game champions and influencers in your company. If you already have an OCC in place, then I would go to them. But I'd ask them to help create this in a fun way that they are actually developing. What are going to be the goals? What are the things you're going to highlight? What are the metrics you're going to use? And you're going to track through the year. So we know that the things we measure are the things that we end up, improving. And so make sure, one, that you've got a way to measure success in each of the different areas of whatever game you decide to put together. It should not just be all fluff and sizzle, right? You got to have some hard numbers so that way you're able to go back and say, yes, I did make an improvement in these areas, and you can compete against different companies. The other thing I would just suggest is if you do the practice scorecard, then that's a great thing to go back to and be able to see what areas of the game do you need to sharpen a little bit, and what can you put in place to actually make that happen. And then, how can you just strengthen overall? I think the other thing I would encourage I would encourage any company to do that's wanting to play a game like this is think about what's important as far as what people want to play for, right? Is it bragging rights? Is it an actual trophy? Is it a pizza party? I mean, what is it? What actually makes a difference in your company that you can help people to keep it a priority and keep going with it? Something else that we've learned over time too is, be reasonable in the goals, because if one department, if the goals are so high that you start to see people they seem as unattainable, then people lose interest and don't end up going through the whole game. And I would also maybe start with just no more than 3 areas to start off with. I think over the years ours has gotten kind of complicated, which is it works for us. But I'd start simple and be sure you're focusing on some things that you really want to improve, and then look at ways to kind of maybe add to that over time.
Awesome. Great advice.
Yeah, we appreciate it, Krisi. And this is all, I mean, there's so many notes that I've made, but I've taken away things like, well, like you just said, set aggressive but reasonable goals, encourage healthy competition within an organization where you're not tearing one another down, but really raising the bar for one another, that the stake in the outcome is far more than bonus plans, and that if don't go for the schmozzle or the sizzle, it's make sure that you back it up with training and understanding and the why. Just so much that we've talked about. We always like to wrap up by asking this question. What's the question we haven't asked you yet? What should we be asking Krisi Schell?
I would say, so as we're talking about employee appreciation and recognition, you might want to ask me, should you make a big deal of Employee Appreciation Day itself? I would say only do that if you're showing appreciation all year long. And
interesting.
Recognition is really only appreciated if you're taking care of all the basic blocking and tackling of being a great employer. You got to have the wages in place. You got to have benefits. You got to have, hours schedules that actually allow people to have quality of life. And if the things are in place, then, thank yous and pizza parties and having t-shirts and all of those things are icing. But those other things have to be in place first. And, just a simple thank you goes a long way. So seeing people all throughout your organization, saying hi, saying thanks for being here, especially on days like today when there's a ridiculous amount of snow outside and it's freezing cold and people have braved the weather to come in, saying thank you for showing up is a huge thing. And so it doesn't have to be something big and over the top. Just be sure you see your people.
Employee Recognition Day is every day.
That's right.
I love it. Well, Krisi, thank you for being here. We really appreciate what you do for the organization and for you sharing the wisdom that you've accumulated. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. It was really fun. Appreciate it.
Rich, thank you for joining us and the great questions that you always bring. Guys, let's keep the conversation going. Let's make sure that you're sending us your questions, your stories. Send us your best practices and your ideas, your challenges and your victories. Remember, you are not alone. You're part of the Great Game community. And we're looking forward to hearing the next story. Let's hear about capitalism at its best. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.